After accidentally falling into a river contaminated with nuclear waste, a man believes his life is over. Instead, the incident unexpectedly sets him on a path that completely changes his fate. At first, Enzo feels an intense chill spreading through his body, and black mucus keeps pouring from his mouth. Struggling through the discomfort, he makes it back home and spends the entire night curled up in the bathroom, vomiting uncontrollably while his body trembles non-stop. But when morning finally arrives, Enzo is shocked to discover that he has completely recovered. Not only that, he feels far more energetic than usual. After hastily finishing breakfast, he heads out to make some extra cash as he normally does. By pure coincidence, however, he stumbles into a violent shootout between rival gangsters. During the chaos, a bullet strikes him, and his body plunges uncontrollably from the top of a building. For an ordinary person, such a fall would be a guaranteed death sentence. Yet the next second, Enzo suddenly opens his eyes and sits upright. The concrete beneath him has been smashed into a massive crater, but he cannot feel even the slightest pain. Unable to believe what has happened, he takes a deep breath and sprints away like a madman, running for miles without showing any sign of exhaustion. Back home, he immediately stands in front of a mirror to inspect himself. Aside from the gunshot wound in his shoulder, his body is virtually unharmed, and even that injury causes no pain at all. After roughly treating the wound, Enzo is about to enjoy his favorite yogurt when loud arguing from downstairs suddenly catches his attention. A burst of unexplained anger surges through him. He only intends to warn his neighbor to keep the noise down, but with a single punch, he accidentally blasts a hole straight through the neighbor's steel door. At that moment, Enzo finally realizes something is seriously different about him. He casually grabs a nearby wardrobe and pushes it several meters with almost no effort. Then, staring in disbelief, he walks over to the corner of the room and effortlessly bends a thick radiator with his bare hands. Enzo stares at his own hands in complete shock. Just a few days earlier, he had been nothing more than a small-time delinquent drifting through life, surviving on petty theft and scams. Everything began when he accidentally stole the watch of an important figure, triggering a massive police manhunt. In a panic, Enzo jumped into a river to escape capture, unaware that it had become a dumping ground for nuclear waste. He swallowed mouthful after mouthful of contaminated water before finally shaking off the police. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that this reckless act would awaken superhuman abilities. Barely able to contain his excitement, Enzo heads out into the city that very night and uses his newfound strength to rip an ATM machine free with brute force alone. Once he has money in his pocket, the first thing he does is rush to a convenience store and buy a huge supply of his beloved yogurt. Even more surprising, the gunshot wound in his shoulder has somehow healed completely, and his body feels as though it possesses endless energy. Just as Enzo begins imagining a bright future, a woman's scream suddenly echoes from downstairs. Curious, he looks outside and discovers several thugs harassing his female neighbor. Having spent most of his life being bullied himself, Enzo instinctively wants to stay out of it. Unfortunately, the gang leader Zingaro finds him particularly irritating and immediately slaps him across the face. Moments later, Zingaro drags the beautiful young woman into her apartment by force, making his intentions painfully obvious. Fortunately, just as things are about to take a terrible turn, a hooded figure crashes through the window. It is Enzo, the same man who was humiliated moments earlier. This time, he has no intention of backing down. Armed with extraordinary strength and incredible durability, he overwhelms the gangsters within minutes, sending the entire group into chaos. After the beaten thugs flee in embarrassment, the neighbor, Alessia, stares at him with shining eyes. Having grown up obsessed with superhero comics and movies, she can hardly believe that she has encountered a real-life superhuman. Naturally, she refuses to miss the opportunity. She follows Enzo all the way back to his apartment, chattering non-stop about heroes, world-saving adventures, and the kinds of stories she has always dreamed of seeing come true. Enzo originally wants nothing more than to get rid of his noisy neighbor, but he worries that the gangsters might come back for her. In the end, he reluctantly allows Alessia to stay at his apartment for the time being. After the girl falls asleep, Enzo instinctively rummages through her backpack and unexpectedly discovers a hand-drawn sketch. The drawing contains a detailed plan for a robbery the gang intends to carry out against an armored cash truck. Suddenly, everything makes sense. That is why the thugs have been relentlessly chasing Alessia. Determined not to let them succeed, Enzo decides to strike first. Before the armored vehicle even reaches the ambush site, he uses a large rock to force it to stop, then effortlessly takes down the guards. By the time the gangsters arrive, he has already emptied the truck of its cash and disappeared with every last dollar. Watching Enzo walk away with the entire haul, Zingaro is so furious he nearly collapses on the spot. After unexpectedly obtaining a fortune, Enzo returns home carrying his favorite yogurt, ready to celebrate properly. Alessia seems to sense his good mood and drags him into watching superhero cartoons with her for the entire evening. Enzo has never met a girl as innocent and sincere as Alessia, and without realizing it, something deep inside him begins to soften. The next morning, news of the mysterious armored truck robbery dominates the headlines. Zingaro is absolutely enraged and swears that no matter what it takes, he will tear apart the masked man who ruined his operation. Meanwhile, with money finally in his pocket, Enzo takes Alessia shopping and spends lavishly. As they spend more time together, their relationship grows closer and closer. Just when things seem ready to become even more intimate inside a fitting room, Alessia is suddenly overwhelmed by painful memories from her childhood. Her mood instantly crashes. She bitterly declares that all men are the same before boarding a bus and preparing to leave. But moments later, the bus comes to a complete stop. Unbeknownst to everyone inside, Enzo is standing behind it, holding the vehicle in place with his bare hands. As stunned bystanders watch in disbelief, he slowly walks up to Alessia and sincerely apologizes. Then, without another word, he lifts her into his arms and quickly carries her away. Only afterward does Enzo realize that he has accidentally exposed his superhuman abilities. Videos of the incident soon spread across the internet. Sitting in front of a television, Zingaro's eyes immediately light up. Both Alessia and the mysterious superpowered man remind him of the same person who has repeatedly sabotaged his plans. The answer becomes obvious. Enzo, the man living upstairs from Alessia. At the same time, Enzo also realizes that his apartment is no longer safe. Carrying a bag stuffed with cash, he plans to leave the city with Alessia and start a new life somewhere far away. What he does not know is that Zingaro has already tracked his every move. Late that night, the two check into a hotel and prepare to stay there temporarily. But just as they begin settling in, the bedside phone suddenly rings. When Enzo picks up the receiver, however, there's only silence on the other end. Before he can make sense of it, the hotel room door is violently kicked open. In the next instant, Zingaro storms inside with several armed men, and a tranquilizer dart slams directly into Enzo's shoulder. When Enzo finally regains consciousness, he finds himself completely wrapped in tape from head to toe. It turns out that Zingaro has not captured him simply for revenge. What he really wants is to discover the secret behind Enzo's superhuman abilities. Recently, Zingaro has been hunted by rival criminal organizations, and he has become obsessed with obtaining that kind of overwhelming power for himself. At first, Enzo refuses to cooperate. The moment he hears Zingaro ranting about getting revenge on an unfair society, he becomes even less willing to reveal the truth. But then Zingaro suddenly pulls out his phone. On the screen is a video showing Alessia being tortured. Instantly, Enzo loses his composure. With no other choice, he takes Zingaro to the same contaminated river where everything began. However, when he explains that drinking the radioactive water is what gave him his powers, Zingaro assumes he is being mocked. Convinced that Enzo is lying, he immediately calls one of his men and orders him to make Alessia suffer even more. What Zingaro does not know is that Alessia has already removed a metal pin hidden in her pocket. The moment she gets an opportunity, she kills the overweight thug guarding her. Free from her restraints, she prepares to reunite with Enzo. But before she can leave, a car suddenly approaches in the distance. It is Zingaro's enemies, who have finally tracked him down. With no chance of escaping, Zingaro grabs Alessia and uses her as a hostage. Unfortunately for him, his pursuers are gangsters as well. They have no reason to care about an innocent civilian. A burst of gunfire erupts, and both Zingaro and Alessia collapse into pools of blood. Seeing that Zingaro is still barely alive, the rival gang leader orders her men to finish the job with a flamethrower. Only after Zingaro tumbles helplessly into the river does she finally leave, satisfied that the matter is settled. Meanwhile, Alessia is already on the verge of death. As he watches the life slowly fade from the woman he loves, Enzo breaks down in uncontrollable grief. Under normal circumstances, the story should have ended there. Yet early the next morning, a man covered in black water crawls onto the riverbank. Against all odds, Zingaro has survived. Not only that, but his fall into the contaminated river has granted him superhuman abilities as well. Unfortunately, his face has been horribly burned by the flames. The first thing he does after his rebirth is apply makeup to cover the damage, while the hatred inside him continues to grow into something monstrous. He casually walks into the home of his enemies and massacres everyone inside, sparing neither men, women, nor children. Then he enters a nearby ammunition depot, where an even more terrifying idea begins to take shape. At the same time, Enzo remains trapped in his grief over Alessia's death. While wandering through the city, he comes across the scene of a traffic accident. Remembering the words Alessia spoke before she died, he instinctively uses his powers to rescue a young girl trapped inside a wrecked vehicle. The heartfelt gratitude of the girl's mother gives Enzo a feeling he has never experienced before, the feeling of being a true hero. But at that exact moment, Zingaro hijacks a live broadcast and delivers a chilling message to the public. He announces that explosives have been planted throughout a stadium and that he intends to kill everyone in the stands. He is not doing it for money, power, or fame. He simply wants revenge against society itself. The moment Enzo sees the broadcast, he realizes he can no longer stay on the sidelines. He has to stop Zingaro. Without hesitation, he borrows a motorcycle from a passerby and races toward the stadium as fast as he can. By the time Enzo arrives, the stadium has already been placed under complete lockdown. All normal entrances are blocked, leaving him with no choice but to force his own way inside using sheer strength. Meanwhile, Zingaro has already finished setting up the explosives. Seeing Enzo finally appear, he smugly announces that the entire stadium will be reduced to ashes within 30 minutes. Without wasting a second, Enzo charges forward and launches a relentless assault. But both men now possess superhuman abilities, making it impossible for either side to gain a decisive advantage. During the fight, Enzo begins to realize that Zingaro seems to be deliberately stalling for time. Suspecting something is wrong, he intentionally creates an opening and temporarily withdraws from the battle. After a quick search, he discovers that the bomb is hidden inside a vehicle parked nearby. Determined to save the crowd, he immediately jumps into the car and tries to drive it far away from the stadium. Unfortunately, every road ahead has already been sealed off by the police. With no other option, Enzo abandons the vehicle and continues on foot. Looking around, he sees nothing but densely packed crowds. The only possible solution is to throw the bomb into the river. But just as he is about to do so, Zingaro suddenly attacks from the side. With the bomb only moments away from detonating, Enzo realizes there is no time left. He sprints straight towards Zingaro, grabs hold of him and the bomb with all his strength, and drags both of them into the river. A massive explosion erupts beneath the water. Zingaro is instantly blown to pieces. Miraculously, Enzo survives. It is through this disaster that he finally comes to understand a simple truth. The greater the power, the greater the responsibility. From that day forward, he chooses to wear the hero mask that Alessia admired so much and quietly dedicate himself to protecting the city before him. That concludes the entire story of They Call Me G Robot. Like many superhero films, this movie explores the journey of an ordinary man gaining extraordinary powers, but it feels far more grounded and human than most. From the selfish excitement of discovering his abilities to eventually accepting the responsibility that comes with them, Enzo's transformation reflects a surprisingly realistic side of human nature. So before we wrap up, I'm curious, if you suddenly gain superpowers, what will be the very first thing you want to do with them?